even Michael Malice made this point once. A lot of people credit it to me, but it was Michael Malice who made this point. He said, if global warming is the threat that Bernie Sanders says it is, if it's going to make the world uninhabitable for your children and grandchildren, then why are we spending any time talking about the minimum wage? Why are we spending any time talking about income inequality? I mean, I'm not saying maybe not no time, but shouldn't climate be like 90% of what you're talking about at least? I mean, if you're really saying it's this level of an existential threat, then this, again, it's like if a meteor is about to hit Earth and we start arguing over top marginal tax rates, it seems like you're not really taking this meteor threat seriously. And I'll tell you, these were some numbers, and this is from the New York Times. So they said, and this is where I go, even though a lot of people like to say they agree with this because it's kind of like, you're following and you go, well, I'm pro-science, and if you don't agree, then you're anti-science, okay? And I've been told all the climate scientists agree. Amongst registered voters, climate change ranked 17th on a list of 29 important issues.
Where was debt, like 30th?
I don't know. I don't have the whole list in front of me,
People
but
are so stupid.
I would put debt, way at the top.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would too. But they put climate change 17th among registered voters. So it doesn't really seem like the general public is really buying into the idea that our species is about to be extinct. Now, amongst moderate and conservative Democrats, it was the 8th most important of 29 issues. So a little bit more, but I'm sorry, still doesn't seem like you're really buying on some gut level. You're not really buying that our species is going extinct, or it wouldn't be 8th most important. And here is actually the one that I found the most interesting. Amongst liberal Democrats, it was the 3rd most important. So even amongst the left part of the Democrats, people aren't treating this as if it is. I think, and this is just my guess, maybe I'm wrong about this, but it seems to me that what people like about this is that it's a tool that you can hit Republicans and people on the right over the head with and say, see, I'm pro-science, you're not pro-science. And so you kind of got to put it up there in important issues, but you're not making it number one. And this, to me, and I commented on this during the last Democratic debate where, climate change comes up about 30, 40 minutes into the debate, and everyone's saying, we're all going to die. And you're like, so then why do we talk about healthcare for a half hour first? I mean, think about the nature of healthcare. If we're all going to die in a few years anyway, wouldn't that be number one? And then we'll start worrying about this healthcare program later? This doesn't seem to add up. Now, you could say this is just, look, we are all about to be killed from climate change, and this is just the fact that people are being irrational or something like that, I suppose. But the ones who are the leaders who are proposing this stuff, even they don't seem to be like, look, if I thought there was something that was going to possibly end our species within my daughter's lifetime, and anything else got brought up first, I would be like, this is insane that we're not talking about the other thing. And none of them did that. None of them seemed to do that. In fact, there was discussion over the Democrats having a debate on climate, like that being one of the debates. There was talk about having a Democratic climate debate, and the DNC voted against it.
Because it's stupid.
So they rejected a proposal to hold a presidential primary date dedicated to climate. They voted 17-8 against the idea. Some environmental activists were upset about this, but that's the truth. So I don't know. It would seem like if you really believe this, we should devote a debate just to that. I don't know. That's my take on it. Anyway, I guess that I'm just not. I think I would really challenge people, if you're sold on the climate change thing, to just go look up the other side of it. Go actually look into what even the UN reports were actually saying because none of them say the things that like the AOCs of the world like to repeat, that, you know, that we're done in 10 years or whatever it is.
To lay out the argument against it, there's kind of 4 factors. First one is, I think the way that they model these things are somewhat just based on fictional assumptions. You have the same problem in economics. Sometimes they go, hey, we're going to assume blank, and then the whole thing is based off some assumption, which is just an assumption. So like the end result of the model was based off an assumption, which can just be wrong. From what I understand of these climate models is that they just kind of throw some assumptions in, and then they come out and go, hey, here's what's going to go on at the end. But it's not like... the science of that is a tad overstated.
Well, here's the truth, is that
Yeah.
even by the UN scientific panel's latest report, they basically said, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but they basically said that we can't predict future temperatures with any degree of certainty.
There you go.
They said, there's just too many factors. The climate's too complicated.
But
we can't predict.
But
it with
even
any
though we
certainty.
can't predict with any certainty, here's what we think. And by the way, we have no evidence of the fact that this is actually man-based and isn't climate-based. And also, here's another like just crazy thing. You can go Google this one, but this one's just crazy. They've also monitored that there's been like a global dimming, and there have been some scientists that said that if we didn't have global warming to counteract global dimming, we would have had a fucking ice age.
Yes. Well, that's
So we might have
been
been
before
saved.
too. It's not even clear that we would be better off. You know,
Yeah.
look, understand. Look, I'm the first to admit there are far smarter people than me who far more qualified than me who make predictions and say this is what's going to happen, and some of them completely disagree with what I'm saying right now. The only point I'm making is that
They don't even believe
far smart. Well, some of them might,
Right.
But far smarter people than me also thought we'd hit peak oil in the 90s. You know,
That was the next thing I was gonna say, is
Some
that
of
they've been
these
saying that forever.
experts had all types of environmental catastrophes that were coming up. The population crisis, the idea that we were going to all run out of resources and food and all of this stuff. There were lots of predictions made in the 60s, 70s, 80s. None of them came true. And the simple fact is that a lot of times these really brilliant people will lose a sense of humility, and they'll be like, look, I'm so much smarter than all of these people that I can tell you what's going to happen in the future. And the truth is that there's so many different variables, so many different factors, that it's very hard to predict how complex systems are going to evolve in the future. It's just very difficult. However, I do like to look at data when you can to maybe kind of help yourself predict this. I'm not a big data guy. I'm not like really a strict empiricist. I'm more of an a priori type guy. I'm more of a guy who likes to work off first principles. However, I did find this one chart to be quite stunning and something that we should look at. So this is global deaths from climate and non-climate related catastrophes. I apologize because some of you guys are listening to this as audio. In fact, the vast majority of you guys listen to this as audio only, but I'll be able to describe this this graph for you. So the blue is climate related deaths. Imagine, have you ever been to like
log
a
flume.
water park?
Yeah.
And now imagine the scariest ride at a water park, and you're coming down it, and you're like, I'm definitely going to fall out of this because we're basically just going in a cliff down. Okay, that is climate-related deaths. So this is from things like floods. Can you make it a little bigger so I can read the just the things under there? So this is from floods, droughts, storms, wildfires, extreme temperatures. This is from 1920 to, somewhere in the post era. I mean, it's just collapsed down.
So it must be technological developments?
Well, I mean, certainly, right. And you can point out that someone could make that argument. They could be like, well, Dave, this is just because we're more, we're living in better houses. We have better technology.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point.
Exactly. So the point is kind of that if you're really worried about people dying, if the argument is that the world's going to be uninhabitable for our children and grandchildren, or that every species is going to go extinct. That's my Elizabeth Warren. Here, let me try a better one. every species go extinct. Many moons. So if that's really the point, it's like, I don't know. It seems a little bit crazy. It doesn't, looking at that chart, kind of make you feel like we might have lost perspective here if we're getting hysterical right now about people dying from climate-related deaths. And to everybody who says, like all these climate catastrophes are due to environmental changes, well, those environmental changes that you're talking about are directly related to technological advances, right? Like if we don't have an industrial revolution, I don't think we're emitting as much carbon as we are now, right? I think that's a safe point to make. I think we can all agree on that. So what all of this carbon emission, because trust me, we're emitting a lot more carbon than we were in 1900. And so all of this technology has resulted in that. Climate deaths going from way up there to way down here. I think that's something you got to grapple with.
And then the inverse of that is the tremendous risk, especially to poor people, if we stop using cheap fossil fuels that is the fuel to economic development, pulling people out of poverty, and what allows for the technological developments you just saw on that chart that actually are keeping us from dying because of weather-related incidents.
The most underreported story of our times, the thing that doesn't get discussed at all, I mean, relatively speaking, that should come up all the time, is how great the globe is doing today.